Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our April 2022 WatchGuard Update webinar. This is Madison Slater. I'm the VP of Security and Compliance here at JSCM Group and your friendly neighborhood WatchGuard expert. So we'll jump right in. Thank you all for attending this month. We've got some updated information to provide for you guys. A little bit of housekeeping before we jump in. So first, everyone's lines will be on mute automatically just to give us all a good listening experience. This webinar will be recorded and will be available for playback on our website. There is a chat function available to you. So please feel free to send over any questions that you might have, and I will be happy to answer those here at the end of our webinar. All right, so as far as our content for this month, if my PowerPoint doesn't get ahead of itself, so we're going to talk about a new Wi-Fi 6 AP model that is available. We've got an end of sale announcement for another access point. We're going to talk about some new AuthPoint SAML integration options, and then we'll be doing a demo of the new WatchGuard Wi-Fi cloud. And as always, at the end, we'll provide you our current list of ongoing WatchGuard trainings in case you are looking at getting any training done for you or a team member. As always, we like to share our recommendations on firmware, so we are sort of in an odd position right now when it comes to firmware. So we do have different versions available depending on the firmware model. So for our XTM 800, 1500, 2500 series and our XTM-Vs, the latest release is 12.13 Update 8, and that is what we are recommending for those devices. But more importantly, we are recommending that if you do have any of those pieces of hardware still lingering in your network, that you get those replaced because they are on very outdated firmware. These updates are really just patches for 12.13, so it's time to get those replaced. For our Firebox T10, T15, P30, T35, T50, M200, M300, the latest release is 12.59 Update 2, and that is the version that we are recommending for you guys. And then I do have a little bit of a typo right here that I didn't catch, so I apologize about that. Our Firebox T10, T40, T55, etc. The latest release is actually 12.8 Update 1. That has been out now for a couple of weeks. Now, we are currently testing 12.8 Update 1. We are still currently recommending 12.7.2 Update 2 for those devices. 12.8 is a decent jump, and there's some cool features inside of that. I am feeling a little bit better with them having Update 1 out. That's our general practice. Updates are really just bug fixes for that firmware release. So as we get a little bit more confident in 12.8 Update 1, we will definitely be sending out alerts for any of our clients recommending upgrades. And if your device is one that we happen to manage, we'll, of course, be pushing that out for you. All right, so let's talk about a new Wi-Fi 6 AP model that we have coming out. So Wi-Fi 6 is the latest and greatest when it comes to Wi-Fi technology. There's a lot of use cases for Wi-Fi 6, better connectivity, that kind of thing. So WatchGuard has come out with their new model. It is the AP432. This is a device that you can manage in WatchGuard Cloud, which of course we'll be doing our demo on today. It has Wi-Fi 6 and WPA3 encryption capabilities. It has a 4x4 radio that is optimized for our Wi-Fi 6 that has 8 omnidirectional internal antennas. There is one PoE port on it. This is something that, if you've got a PoE switch, makes that easy to get it powered up. And then our data rates are pretty good on that device. So if you are, if it's coming up time for you to get some of your APs replaced, WatchGuard's actually been doing a lot in the access point arena. In a webinar a couple of months ago, we talked about their remote access point capabilities, which we're really impressed with. So lots of movement here from the wireless standpoint. If you are looking at upgrading your hardware, it is a good idea to go ahead and go with the Wi-Fi 6 model. Now, WatchGuard recommends that in your environment, you wouldn't necessarily mesh a Wi-Fi 5 and a Wi-Fi 6 device just because of some differences in management. So if it's coming time for you to replace, it's good to go the latest and greatest. Wi-Fi 6 is definitely the way that we want to be moving. Specifically, this is that mentality of we are not preparing for today, we're preparing for next year or a couple of years from now. So we want to make sure if we are having to replace equipment that we're getting good, capable equipment in there. And so with this new AP432, we've got that Wi-Fi 6 capability. If this is a device that you are interested in, please feel free to reach out to your account manager here and we can help you get some pricing on that access point or any of their other access points. We do have a quick end of sale announcement for a wireless access point. This is the AP327. Now this is an outdoor access point. The end of sale for this device will be May 1st. The end of life for this device, we do have a little bit more time on that. That's going to be 2025. So if you have any AP327Xs, it just means you can't purchase them after May 1st, but they will continue to be supported until 2025. The migration path for this device is the AP430CR. So again, if you were looking at some outdoor access points or if you were contemplating purchasing the AP327, then the 430CR is the recommended upgrade path for that. All right, a little bit of update from the Offpoint side of things. We do have a new Offpoint SAML integration function that is available for us. For any of you that might not be aware, so SAML is a protocol that creates a trust relationship. So this is typically done through a cloud application if we're dealing with something like 365 or GoToConnect or Salesforce. There's plenty of stuff that can do SAML authentication, but it creates a trust relationship between that cloud application and an identity provider, which would be your MFA solution like Offpoint. SAML is the basis of most of Offpoint's functionality when it comes to tying it into other sources, specifically those third party. So if you are using something like Offpoint, if you are using Offpoint with something like 365, then it's the SAML protocol that is handling that communication. So what WatchGuard is doing is implementing some additional functionality from the SAML perspective. So now with Offpoint, they are going to offer SAML integration that will allow us as admins to add custom attributes directly into that SAML configuration. So this is going to really just provide us some additional configuration options outside of what is currently documented. Now, WatchGuard has a very comprehensive integration guide or documentation of integration available on their website. What this is giving us is the ability to figure out how to tie SAML into services that aren't necessarily documented. So it's going to give us a lot more flexibility from that perspective. WatchGuard will still continue their efforts of documenting as they identify key cloud services that their clients or customers might be integrating with Offpoint. But this will give us as admins a little bit more flexibility there. And yeah, better speed with adding those new protected resources. One of the benefits of this quicker, faster deployment, most of our SAML integrations at this point will now be able to be integrated. So if you have a cloud solution that if you're already using Offpoint and something that they didn't necessarily have available in their integration guides, that's what this new functionality is built for. An additional part of this, and something that's a little small, but also I think pretty cool, is that we can now select icons of our choice for generic SAML integration. So really just making it easier for our users to identify what they're connecting to. So if Offpoint is a service that you're using or a service you have been considering using, definitely a lot more functionality now with this SAML update, SAML integration update. That's going to make it a lot easier for us to start tying this into other third-party services. Just as a little note, so we do a lot of demos of Offpoint. This is always something that I make sure to mention. From a licensing perspective, Offpoint is purely licensed by the number of users that you have set up in that system. It doesn't care how many resources you want to tie it into. Now, we have our big three that we focus on: mobile VPNs, email access, especially if you're using something like 365 or G Suite, something that's really public like that, and then domain or computer access. It does not cost me anything extra from a licensing standpoint to roll that out to any of those as long as my users have tokens. So if I have 100 users in my environment, I just need 100 tokens. If I then want to tie it to those three, if I want to add it to my VPN, if I want to add it to my computer login, if I want to add it to my email, but then if I want to start tying it into my other cloud services, so if I want to tie it into my AWS environment where we're logging in from that perspective, if I want to tie it into my Screen Connect or my Log Me In system or my Team Viewer system, that doesn't cost me any extra. If you are using AuthPoint, then you really want to start taking a look at what other areas can you expand that out to. And from a user perspective, if they are already set up with their app and with their token or with their hardware token, then that's a pretty easy implementation. MFA is something that should be integrated on absolutely every system that it could be, because as we like to say around here, passwords are dead. We can't rely on passwords, so the more stuff we can put AuthPoint on or MFA in general on, the better off we are. So this integration or this improved SAML authentication integration option with AuthPoint is really what's going to allow us to even further expand that out. Anytime I'm setting up a new system with our environment, or if I'm doing my periodic checks of access and things like that, if it is not something that I already have MFA set up on, then it's definitely something that I'm taking into consideration. MFA needs to be the norm in your environment. It absolutely has to be, just from a security perspective. So if you've been thinking of jumping into something like Offpoint, but you were a little hesitant because maybe there was a third-party service that you didn't see in their integration guides, that's really what this is for. If it can do SAML authentication, this gives us a lot more flexibility. All right, so now we will move over to our demo using the new WatchGuard Wi-Fi cloud. So just a little WatchGuard history. WatchGuard has had a cloud Wi-Fi solution for quite a while at this point. They've had this Wi-Fi cloud available. Now, I am a very transparent person, especially when it comes to WatchGuard. When their WatchGuard cloud Wi-Fi first came out many, many moons ago, it wasn't the best. It worked from a functionality standpoint, but management was a little weird. It was a little difficult to navigate. Now, they have definitely made some improvements in that system over the years, and it is a much different system now than it used to be. But one of the things that they have done is basically built a whole new infrastructure for Wi-Fi cloud. Now, this is not something currently that you can use on every access point. Newer access points typically will have the functionality tie-in with the new WatchGuard cloud, but some older access points are still going to be pointed over to the older version of this. The new WatchGuard Wi-Fi cloud is really designed to implement ease of use configuration for your cloud APs. Now, some of you might be using WatchGuard APs and you are managing them from the firewall level, meaning you're using Gateway Wireless Controller. That also offers a good amount of functionality, but it is becoming more of a trend that we have cloud managed APs. This also makes it easy for us to roll out access points, maybe in a location that doesn't necessarily have a WatchGuard firewall. So things like our remote access points, it can be a way for us to manage those centrally. So WatchGuard has been doing a lot to try and get that functionality working the way that they want. So they have now implemented the WatchGuard cloud Wi-Fi portion to give us the functionality of that cloud management. So let me get logged in here and I'll show you. We are actually in the process of moving our Wi-Fi over to the cloud. We're replacing some older configurations. So this is all under cloud.watchguard.com. So this is also the place where we manage our AuthPoint, our threat detection. So they're all putting it here basically under one console to make it a little bit easier for us to navigate. Now, one of the things that I really like about WatchGuard Cloud is that you can configure the APs individually. but it's actually a lot easier to do it as a site. So what basically you set up the profile for your location and then you just attach access points into that. So you're not having to individually configure each AP, which would be which is one of the downsides of something like Gateway Wireless Controller. It is more of an individual AP function than necessarily having a global cloud management. So configuration here is actually pretty straightforward. So this is the site that we have for our office. And really the first thing is you create your SSIDs. Now you have options in here. You can create SSIDs that tie back into your network. So we do VLANs off of our firewall. Those then control our policies. So we have all of that tied back in. So basically when you are setting up an SSID, you set up whatever the SSID is, the type of SSID that we are dealing with, what type of radio connectivity, our authentication options. So this is just our guest network. So we just do a pre-shared key on this. Our internal networks, we're typically doing enterprise level authentication. We are doing a VLAN from our firewall, which means that it's bridged, but you can also do NATing. And what that means is that the cloud itself would be in control of the IP addresses. So those aren't necessarily coming from your network. Those are things that the cloud itself is controlling. Now, inside of this, we can also dive down into access control. So for example, one of the things that I'm going to do in here is I'm going to take the MAC addresses of our internal networks and I'm going to set it so that those devices can't hop over to the guest network. So I can use access control to ensure that those restrictions are put in place. So I can take all of my MAC addresses for my computers internally, set this as the block MAC address list, add those. So even though that employee might know the guest password because we allow them to connect their personal devices, I don't want my company machine hopping over because our guest is a little bit more open. So I do have some access control functionality inside of it. I can turn on scheduling. So one of the things that I will probably go in here and do is narrow this down. Our guest network doesn't necessarily always need to be available. We are in a mixed use building. There's other organizations that are in the same building as us. So outside of our business hours, there's really not a lot of need for us to have that SSID available. You can do certain traffic shaping if you want to. This is not something we currently have turned on, but you can do some SSID bandwidth control. So if you have concerns about utilization and I want to set a specific upload or download limit, I can do that as a whole, or I can dive down and do that for client connections. So especially something like a widely used public area that you're providing guest network, you probably want to do some traffic throttling on them. So very easy for me to get that set up. And then just some advanced settings. So specifically for guest networks, we are huge on making sure client isolation is turned on. Just as I'll take my WatchGuard hat off for a second, just as a very specific security reminder, check your guest network, make sure client isolation is turned on so they can't see each other. I've got fast roaming turned on, things like that. But again, pretty easy from a setup standpoint as far as our SSIDs go. So once we get those SSIDs set up, through this, we can go in and say what devices we have subscribed to our site, and then we can push out changes to those devices once we get them supplied or once we get them subscribed. This access point VPN, so this is the remote access point capability. You can do captive portals inside of this. We don't have that turned on yet, but we will be getting that configured. This is a brand new setup for us. If you can't tell, we just did this a couple of days ago, actually. I wanted to use it as an opportunity to show what this looked like. So we'll be putting a captive portal on our guest network, accepting terms of use. Captive portals are customizable, so you can go in and say, here's the SSID that I want to attach this to, and then I can brand that specifically, or I can go into my advanced settings I can give walled garden access, meaning these are the websites they can get access to without passing through that splash page. So maybe I want to give them access to my company website. Cool, look at my website, but you can't get through anything else until you pass through that splash page. So we do have that functionality there with our captive portals. And let me hop back here. We also do have we've got some good logging inside of this, so I can see, what is our deployment history, and I can see some information on if it succeeded. I can compare versions of what was rolled out. So very good auditing, deciding, who made the change, what are we pushing out, that kind of thing. So um, again, it's not every model of WatchGuard AP that has cloud management capabilities. If this is something that you're interested in and you know what model of AP you're using, it's a very easy thing to look up on their website. Also, please feel free to reach out to us and we'll get that information for you. But definitely some cool functionality there. I'm really excited to get it fully up and running and put its paces. Personally, I'm just excited to have a cloud managed option. I am out of the office a lot, so now at least I can get in and manage my Wi-Fi if there is an issue. Okay, and finally, we always like to share our WatchGuard training schedule. We offer classes typically every couple of weeks. So our next class coming up is May 9th through 12th. So if you want to come visit me in Chicago, we are offering that class in person and virtually. So, if that's something that you're interested in, that one is coming up in a couple of weeks. Then we are going to be in Vegas near the end of May. Atlanta in June, and then Nashville in June as well. So definitely got some cool places coming up that we're going to be traveling around to. We also always offer custom on-site training. So if you have several people in your organization that you want to get trained, we are more than happy to come out to you and get your team trained all at once. All right. And finally, if there are any questions that anyone has, please feel free to send those over and I will be happy to answer those before we wrap up for this month. All right, not seeing any questions come in, but as always, if something pops up, if you have any questions about anything we covered, anything you've got going on in your environment, please feel free to reach out to me. You can also reach out to Sue or Adam, depending on who your account manager is, and they will be happy to assist with any questions that you might have. Thank you all very much for your time. We really appreciate it. If you have any suggestions or requests on topics you would like us to cover for the month of May, please shoot those over to me as well. We're always looking for things that are new, relevant, pertinent, whatever whatever information we can share, we are happy to. So thank you all for your time. I hope you have a great rest of your week, and we will see you in May.